Hey, it's good to be in church today. I'd rather be in this church than the best hospital in Houston, wouldn't you? I love this place. Would you turn with me in your Bibles to the book of Isaiah, chapter 50. Isaiah chapter 50. Now, the Isaiah is in the Old Testament, so here is a quick way to find the book. You ready? You close your Bible. You open it up in the middle, as close to the middle as you can. Depending on how many maps and stuff you got in the back, you're going to be at Psalms. If you're at Psalms, turn right, go 4 books. Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon, Isaiah. If you get to Jeremiah, make a U-turn, come back, you went too far. Isaiah chapter 50 and verse 10. This morning we're going to begin a new series on where is God in my pain. But today, that title for many in this church is not the title of a sermon series, it is a heart cry. It's where you are. We have people in our church that are really hurting, going through some deep waters, going through some big trouble, great difficulty, a lot of pain in their life. And they're desperate, you're desperate to hear the voice of God. And can I tell you, for those who are not in that position, get ready, it's coming. This is our world. This is life. Life brings pain. It's part of it. In this series, there's 5 messages, and the intention of the 5 messages is to be layers, each one of them to be a layer, so that it's a progression. I'm asking you to take the journey with me. 5 Sundays, take the journey with me. And every Sunday, sort of building on the other, as we get to a point to start understanding, what does the Bible say about this pain? What is God saying to me through this moment that I'm going through? The series is not designed to ask every question, because the truth is, or answer every question, because I don't know the answers. There's so many things I don't know the answers to. And here's the truth. One day when I get to heaven, I'm going to be asking a lot of questions myself, because there's a whole lot of things about life that does not make sense to me. But here's what I want to say to you, and I really want you to hear this. There are answers for every question. Every pain, every struggle that you are going through, every hurt, every deep wound that you feel or have felt or will feel, there are answers for them. And some of those answers you will get on this side of heaven. Some of those things God will begin to reveal to you as time goes by. Some of the answers to those questions you will not get until you get to heaven. And some of them, when you get to heaven, it won't matter anymore. But if it still matters, let me just tell you, Jesus Christ, you ask Him point blank when you get to heaven, why this? Why the timing? Why ask whatever question? I have a God who's a reasonable God, who's a logical God, who's in control kind of God, and He's got an answer for exactly why this happened, when it happened, how it happened. He has an answer. Ask Him. There is an answer to every question, I promise you. So reserve it, it's okay. If it doesn't come together before heaven, it will. You can ask Him that question. What our goal is in this series is to get an understanding of where is God when we hurt, when we are in pain. Where is He? What is He doing? What is this about? And we're going to be in the process of building an understanding of what the Bible teaches about this. Now, this morning, I want to talk about how we can begin the journey out of the darkness. And that's where many people are in this room today. There's a darkness. How do I start the journey out of it? I want to talk to you about that today. You found, hopefully, the passage in Isaiah chapter 50 and verse 10, and listen to what he says. Who is among you that fears the Lord, that obeys the voice of His servant, that walks in darkness and has no light. Let him trust in the name of the Lord and rely on his God. The first thing that I want us to talk about this morning is this truth: there is value in the darkness that we go through in our lives. There's value within the dark days of our life. Go back to the verse and let's look what it says. Who is among you that fears the Lord? We're talking about you, aren't we? To fear the Lord does not mean to be afraid of him. It means I reverence him. He matters to me. I respect him. I praise him, just like we just did. God means something to me. This is what it means to fear the Lord. Who is it among you that fears the Lord? He's talking about you, isn't he? And who obeys the voice of his servant. Now, we translate that in this time in our life. We translate it, and who obeys the word of God. That's you, isn't it? I'm not talking about perfectly, because none of us perfectly obey. None of us do the right thing every time. Every one of us mess up from time to time. All of us do things wrong. We say things wrong, have wrong attitudes. It is a part of our life. We want to root it out the best we can, keep growing and maturing. But here's the truth. We are trying to obey the Word of God. We are trying to live for the Lord. We are making decisions right, wrong, going the right way because God says it's the right way. We are trying to live by the Word of God. He's talking about you. Reverencing God, obeying the Word of God. Now notice the next phrase, and this is what took me by surprise in the passage. That walks in darkness and has no light. Can I tell you, when I first read this passage, I said, what? See, I would have thought he would have said, who is it among you that loves God, reverences God, obeys God, walks in the light? Doesn't that make sense? But he says, no, you're walking in darkness. And you have no light. There are days when the most godly person, living in complete faith and obedience to God, walks in darkness. And that's where some of you are right now. You've done your best. You tried your hardest. You love him. And you found yourself in darkness. Now, this is not the story. This is not the story. We hear from some preachers on radio and television, and they say, you know, you love God, you obey God, you revere God, do what God wants, and it's health and wealth and success for you. Well, we do have, all of us from time to time, a little health and wealth and success in our life. Yeah, but that's not the whole story of the Bible. We also, while we're living this way for God, have times in which we have deep pain, deep heartache, and we're walking in darkness. There are plenty of examples in the Bible of people just like this. How about Habakkuk in the Old Testament? How about that for a name? So you say, what? Habakkuk? He wrote a book in the Old Testament. He's a godly man. He loved the Lord, and God so trusted him, he gave him his word so he could write this book and write it in the name of God. Habakkuk, the book of Habakkuk. And in his book, as he is writing this book, he's saying, God, I don't understand you at all. What you do makes no sense to me. How you do it makes no sense to me. I'm baffled by you, God. I'm in the dark about you. I don't understand you. You ever felt this way? This is Habakkuk. This is the Bible. And how about the classic example of Job in the Old Testament? Here is a guy that at the beginning of the book it says he is the godliest man in the whole world at this time. And here is Job, loving God, serving God, living for God. And Job goes through all the pain and the agony and the suffering. And he says in Job 19 verse 8, God has set darkness in my path. And then in New Testament, there's John the Baptist. John the Baptist, Jesus said, there's not a man born of woman that is greater than John the Baptist. John the Baptist is a guy that sort of revealed Jesus to the world. Behold, the Lamb of God that takes away the sins of the world. John the Baptist. But later in John the Baptist's life, he's arrested, put in prison, down in a dungeon, deep dark hole. He's abused. He's tortured, tormented. And in the darkness of the moment in his life, he starts having doubts. Have you ever had doubts? In the darkness, having doubts? Sure. John the Baptist having doubts. And in the midst of the doubt, this is John the Baptist, folks. In the midst of the doubts, he sends somebody to Jesus and says, wait a minute, are you the Messiah? Or should we look for somebody else? John the Baptist. And then there's the Apostle Paul in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 8. He says, we are perplexed, but not in despair. The word perplexed means I don't understand. I'm in the dark, but I'm not giving up. Look, if you have times in your life in which you're in the dark, there is a sense of walking in darkness. I don't understand what God is doing. I don't agree with what God is doing. I don't like the situation that I find myself in. If you are in that moment in your life, don't beat yourself up. You're in good company. The whole idea of darkness, how that word is being used in the passage, is the absence of understanding. The absence of understanding. I don't understand why. Why me? Why now? Why this way? I don't understand. I'm in darkness. You read the stories, the biographies of great Christian people, men and women from the beginning, 2,000 years ago until now, and as you're reading their biography, you'll come to places in their biography in which they have a deep darkness of the soul, they would say. They would call it. Deep darkness of the soul. People say to us, you know, this moment is like an embroidery in which you look at the back of it and it's all jumbled like this up here. Just a jumbled mess, makes no sense. And boy, this is how we feel sometimes, isn't it? I can't make rhyme or reason out of this. I don't know where it's going. I don't understand any of this. And people say to us, this is sort of the way life is. There's times in which it makes no sense. But then when you turn it over to the other side, it says God is in control. So look, be strong. And the person says, you know what? It's true. I believe that. I believe that ultimately when I come to the end of this, I will realize, I will see that God was in control. But I'm going to tell you, right now where I am in the journey is that God keeps putting stitches in the embroidery, and every time He does, He's poking me. And it hurts. And I don't know what to do with this. And somebody says, trust God, have faith, be strong. And there is a part of inside of us that says, yeah, but you're not the ones getting sticked. I am. There are answers. And maybe you'll get some now, maybe we'll get some when we get there, but there are answers. But in the in-between time, the Bible says that God takes us through dark days. So why? I think there are some reasons. For instance, there are some things that can only be seen in the darkness. I'm going to do something. I need you to work with me, okay? I need you to work with me. Some of you, you've got cell phones, and you're only using the cell phone because it's your Bible, you're taking notes, and good. I want you to do that. But here's what I'm going to ask. Take the iPhone, your cell phone, the iPad, whatever. Would you turn it off real quick? Don't worry. I understand. I don't like to be disconnected either. So we'll get you connected back in a few minutes. But just play along with me right now. Would you turn it off? Because I don't want there to be any lights. Okay, so turn it off. Everybody turn it off. Now, let's bring the lights all the way down as much as we can. You can't turn off some machines because that would not work out well for the rest of the service. But, so there is a little bit of light, but not much. Now, it's darkness. Look around. What do you see? How many do you see? I would say how many, but I can't see your hands anyway. Do you see the exit signs? Good grief, look at all the exit signs. When you walked into the room, seriously, did you come in and say, wow, now this room has a lot of exit signs? No, you didn't see the exit signs. But now they're everywhere. Right above me, I can't move forward because I don't know where the edge of the platform is. I don't want to die. Right up above me, there is a red little pin light. And I hadn't seen that one before. And then you look at the projectors, and you see some lights coming out of those, just little lights. I hadn't seen those lights. And there's a projector way in the back, and there's got little lights on it. And in the darkness, you can see some things that you would have not seen in the light. One day, get in your car at night and drive outside of the city of Houston, the region around us, and you may have to drive for like 2 hours until it's dark, really dark. There's no lights, there's no towns by, there's no that kind of stuff going on, and look up in the sky. I got to tell you, it's breathtaking. There's billions of stars. It is beautiful. And right there is the Milky Way. There's our galaxy we're in the middle of, and we can see it. Unbelievable. And shooting stars. And the moon is so bright. It's beautiful. In the darkness, you can see things you cannot see in the light. Guys, bring the lights back up. And, oh, hurry, everybody turn on your iPhone again. And in Isaiah chapter 45, verse 3, in Isaiah 45, verse 3, listen to what it says. I will give you the treasures of darkness. Now that one took me by surprise. There's a whole context in the whole passage. We're not going to deal with all that. But I want you to just take at face value that phrase, I will give you the treasures of darkness. Have you ever thought about that? There's treasures in the dark? God is saying to us, there are some things you can now see because it's dark days that you couldn't see before. And there are treasures you now realize you have that you didn't know before. And it's only because it's dark. There's another thing that I came to my mind with this, and it's simply this. That sometimes the faith that is born in the light is developed in the darkness. Do you remember photography film? You remember when you'd go like to Walmart or to the drugstore and you'd buy this canister? It had film in it. And you put it out, you'd load up your camera, and it had 12 shots, or 24, or 36. It didn't have 9,623 shots. You know what I'm saying? It was film, you put it in there, and you were really careful with what you shot because you got, not a lot of shots. And then when it's over, what do? It rolls back up, roll it back up in the canister, take it to Walmart, wait for an hour. They give you your pictures. Now, I bring this out because there are people in this room that have never heard of photography film. Whoa, seriously? This is what you used to do? But guess what? That photography film was always developed in the dark. That's why they call it a dark room. You can't develop it in the light. You got to develop in the dark. You and I have been taught things. We come to church, we learn new things. We're in our Bible study, our quiet time, we learn new things. Oh man, I feel great about this. I'm ready to take on anything. And then anything comes. And then we go into dark. And now we realize, how much do I really believe? What did I really learn? What we learn in the light is what gets developed in the darkness. So whatever you do, when you are in the midst of the darkness, instead of panicking and getting angry at God, Stop and say, this is my moment. This is my moment. It's darkness, but this is where I really show my stuff. We grow deeper and faster in the dark than we grow any other time. And look, every one of us would trade the dark for the light as soon as we get into the dark. Every one of us would do that. But what we do know is this: we grow deeper and stronger in the darkness than we've ever dreamed about growing in the light. It may not answer the why that we're going through the darkness, but it does help us start with the answer of what now? And what do I do with this? And here's another great truth. Darkness doesn't last forever. Darkness for us doesn't last forever. Psalm 112 verse 4 says, light arises in the darkness for the upright. He is gracious and compassionate and righteous. Now notice what he says. You're upright, you're living a right life, you're doing godly things, great. You got darkness. You've got darkness. And it doesn't last forever. There is light arising in your life through the darkness at God's timing in your life because you love Him and are walking with Him. That's what he says in the verse. So what do you do then between now and when the light comes? What do you do? This is what the passage is telling us. Notice what it says. It tells us how to respond to the darkness. Isaiah 50 verse 10. Who is among you that fears the Lord, that obeys the voice of His servant, that walks in darkness, has no light? Let him trust in the name of the Lord. First thing he says to us is, while you're in darkness, God asks you, would you trust me? When Job was suffering so intently and going through all that he was going through, God came to him and said, Job, I'm God. I know what I'm doing. Trust me. Even if we had all the explanations, it still wouldn't help. When your heart is being wrung out like a sponge, getting some orderly list of 16, here is the theological reasons for pain, can be nothing more than just salt on the wound. Now, there is a place for the theological explanations of why pain. There is a place for this. And in fact, next week, we're going to begin the process of working through this. It's the next layer. But the time that we go through that, we need to, at least emotionally, have what it is we're going through in the rearview mirror. Because if it's fresh, it's raw, and we're just beginning, and someone wants to give us the list of all the reasons why pain comes, maybe we're not so interested. Maybe we're not so ready. And this is really what this message is about to say. Look, I get that. There is darkness. It is hurtful. It is painful. When a little child has a boom, a knock, pain, and they're hurt and they start crying, what do? Run to their daddy or their mommy and they say, oh, Daddy, help me. And do they want their daddy to say, okay, here's how I'm going to help you. Sit down. Now, let's talk about like 6 things that might be happening to you now that could be. Are you kidding me? All that child wants is for the dad to put his arms around him and say, I love you. It's going to be okay. I'm here. When my oldest son, Matthew, was only 5 or 6, about the age that his now oldest son is, Matthew loved Superman. I mean, seriously loved Superman. And we bought him a cape. He had this cape on everywhere he went. Even if we'd go to the store, he had a cape on. And in the house, and he put the cape on, and he would run across the floor, Superman, man of steel. And he would get on things and he would jump off. And as he jumped off as though he were flying through the air, he was really just dropping like a rock. Superman, man of steel. And one day, he jumps off not very far, a little 5-year-old boy jumps off. But when he landed, underneath his jaw, hit his knee really hard. And the really bad thing about it is his tongue was sticking out of his mouth when he did that. And so when his jaw hit his knee and pushed his teeth together, his teeth cut off his tongue. I'm not kidding. I mean, you think it sounds bad to you. I lived this thing. And the only thing he had was a little sliver of a tongue hanging on that was connecting the back tongue to the front tongue. That was all that was there. Blood pouring out. And what a moment. What a moment in our family. And we were all there. So that was a good thing. And so we had a group of doctors that were all together in a group, and so I called Terrell and one of them, and I told him what happened. He said, "Hey, you just get him in the car." He said, "We will be ready as soon as you arrive, and we will get this fixed." So we got him in the car. We had stuff in his mouth to stop the bleeding, and I was afraid he might swallow the tongue that got bit off, and there was just all kinds of stuff going on, and we're just trying to get him to there, and we got him there, and they had a table, and every single doctor, every nurse said to all the rest of the patients, "You just wait, we got an emergency," and they were holding different parts of this little 5-year-old's body because he was just going crazy while they sewed the tongue back on. My job was to be at his head encouraging him. Yeah. See, I'd have gotten fired that day. I'm the encourager. But here's the kicker. When they're sewing the tongue back on, they cannot deaden the tongue. No anesthesia. No. And so this little boy, feels every stitch going in. I'm the encourager. So he's just weeping, you can imagine, and I'm, "Oh, Matthew, you're going to be fine." and he's crying, and he says, "Make them stop." And then he said to me, "Daddy, don't you love me anymore?" And I said, I was trying to keep from crying. I said, "Matthew, I love you so much, and that's why I can't stop them." He didn't understand that. Just like you and I don't understand it. When we're getting ourselves sewn back, we don't understand this. Warren Wiersbe said, "We live in a generation where the mysteries of life are no longer tolerated. They have to be explained. I want everything explained." We Christians can fall into the same trap, and everything must be explained, and forget that there is much about God, and in fact, most things about God and His ways that are still and always will be a divine mystery. We don't live by explanations, he said. We live by promises. And God says, when you can't understand, when there aren't the answers, God is saying, "Trust me." This is not a cliche. This is God speaking. It's a lifeline. Trust me. Second, if you're in darkness right now, lean on God. See what he says? "Who among you that fears the Lord obeys the voice of his servant, that walks in darkness, has no light? Let him trust in the name of the Lord and rely on his God." The word that is translated "rely" here means to lean upon for support. To lean upon. Did you know it's the exact same word in the 23rd Psalm that is translated staff? "Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me." You remember that? It's the same word. It means to lean on. And what God is communicating is this: it'd be better for you to be in the valley of the shadow of death and have me to lean on than be on the top of the highest mountain with the sun shining, but not have me. Lean on me. And there's a last thing. If you're in darkness right now, don't manipulate your light. Now listen to what the passage. I got to tell you, this passage so took me by surprise. Isaiah 50, this is verse 11, but notice, who is it among you that fears the Lord, obeys the voice of his servant, walks in darkness, has no light? Let him trust in the name of the Lord and rely on his God. Behold, verse 11, all you who kindle a fire, who encircle yourselves with firebrands, walk in the light of your fire and among the brands you have set ablaze. This you will have from my hand, you will lie down in torment. What? What does that even mean? I mean, seriously, it's got to be one of the most confusing verses in the entire Bible. What does it mean? I looked at one commentary after another, one after another, and every one of them said exactly the same thing. Here's what they said. Verse 11 is talking about a person who decides, no, I'm not going to trust God. I'm not going to rely on God. I'm not going to lean on Him. I'm mad at Him. How dare this happen to me? I will go my own way. I will make my own fire in the darkness. I will trust in my own resources. I will trust in my own answers and in my own direction. I'll do what I want to do. And I want to do it now. And God says, okay. But let me just tell you, you're going to go deeper into darkness and deeper into pain than you've ever realized if you manipulate the light. Why? Because this moment in your life I reserved for this time. I'm trying to teach you some things. I'm trying to grow you. I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to take you deeper, make you stronger. This is an important moment in your life. And if you manipulate your way out of this moment, you'll never learn. And you will find a greater pain, a greater difficulty. You will have never grown. Don't do it. What are some biblical examples of this? I think about the story of Abraham. And there is Abraham, and God comes to Abraham and He says to Abraham, I'm going to give you and Sarah a son. It's going to be Isaac. A son's coming. I'm giving you a promise. Now wait. And they waited, and they waited, and they waited, and they waited. And they got tired of waiting. And haven't you felt that way? I've waited long enough. I'm going to manipulate my moment. I'm going to just do it. And that's what they decided. And Sarah and Abraham got together. Let's manipulate this. We're going to have a surrogate mother. We're going to have Hagar, and we're going to go this route. And hey, this will be the answer. And Ishmael came. And God loved Ishmael and Hagar. But for generations, for hundreds of years, thousands of years, the descendants of Isaac and Ishmael have been at battle with each other. Abraham manipulated the moment. I think of Moses. God said to Moses, I'm going to make you a deliverer of my people. So he sees one of his people getting hurt, and he decides, I'm going to seize the moment, and he killed the guard, and then he had to run for his life. He didn't do any deliverance. He wasn't a deliverer. Now he's a murderer. Abraham was an adulterer. So you know you're starting to manipulate the light whenever you're starting to make decisions that you know good and well violate what God says. And then Moses is on the backside of nowhere for 40 years, just waiting for now the new moment. And I think of Peter in the New Testament. And Jesus said in the Garden of Gethsemane, just watch and wait and pray. And instead of praying, he fell asleep. And then here come the soldiers. And Peter does what he normally did, just out of reaction. He grabs a sword and he cuts the ear off of Malchus, the servant of the high priest. And Jesus picks up the ear and he puts it back on Malchus and heals it. He turns to Peter and he rebukes him and said, "What in the world are you doing? This isn't how we treat people. This isn't how we respond to issues." Peter, now lost in the moment because he wasn't ready for it, ends up denying Jesus 3 times. Trusting God and resting in God during the darkness does not mean we're inactive, doesn't mean we do nothing. It means that we are waiting calmly for the light God gives, and then we act. But we don't manipulate the moment. We wait on God so that it's God's light, and so that God in the dark time can teach us what He wants to teach us. There was a father and his little girl who came home from the funeral home. After the funeral of her mother, his wife. I can't fathom that. And you can imagine they were numb, everything, all the feelings. And the little girl said to her daddy, "Can I sleep with you tonight? I don't want to sleep by myself." And he said, "I don't want to sleep by myself either." And so they snuggle up together, daddy and little girl. And a few moments later, the little girl said to her daddy, "Daddy, it seems darker tonight than I can ever remember. Can you see my face?" And he said, "Yes, I can see your face." She said, "Okay." And she turns her head and she goes to sleep. And as you can imagine, the dad he's totally awake. And after a few moments, he crawls out of bed and gets on his knees beside the bed. And he says, "Father, it seems darker tonight than I've ever known. Can you see my face?" And in his heart, he heard the voice of God, "I can see your face." He climbed back in bed and went to sleep. This is a dark day for some in this room. But I want you to know He can see your face. And He cares about you, and He's here for you. It doesn't change the questions, but I want you to know it. Let's pray.